I found my love in Avalon beside the bay. I left my love in Avalon and sailed away. I dream of him in Avalon from dusk till dawn. So I think I'll travel on to Avalon. I found my love in Avalon. I left my love in Avalon. I dream of him in Avalon from dusk till dawn. So I think I'll travel on to Avalon. The bay. I left my love in Avalon and sailed away. I dream of him in Avalon from dusk till dawn. So I think I'll travel on to Avalon. Gonna get my coat, gonna take a boat to Avalon.
It's nice to be here. We really appreciate the great turnout. I think this is a real tribute to the spirit of Mayfield, a community those of us who live nearby have come to admire with your resilience and your community spirit the last 15 months. I think it's also a great sign of the awareness and appreciation of the heritage of the Jackson Purchase that this area has produced a very significant American artist who may have been neglected for some time, but who has been rediscovered, and that's to all of our benefit. So we thank you all for coming. We're going to go now immediately and invite the mayor to the podium to make a proclamation.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. I have lost my voice. When I was a teacher, all my students would go, yay! And so I would whisper. But I do have a little more volume than I did yesterday, so I'm going to do this. One of my favorite things to teach about when I was a teacher, I taught U.S. history at Mayfield High School for a long time. And one of my favorite things to teach about was Ellis Wilson. And always, if we didn't get to it before, we always got to it in February. And I would show them parts of the KET special on him, So Much to Paint. And, you know, I hope that they remembered that. That was when they knew him from the picture in the Cosby Show. And so I made sure that through a grant actually from Murray State, I was able to purchase that print, the funeral procession, and I think the Booster Club framed it for us. And I don't know where it is now through all that reconstruction, but I'm sure it's there. And Miss Brown always proudly displayed it during the month of February. So, you know, we feel like that Ellis Wilson is our favorite son, at least in the art community, and we're so happy to have this day to celebrate him and to celebrate his beautiful, beautiful work. I read this at the council meeting this past Monday to set aside this day. And it is a proclamation. Whereas Mr. Ellis Wilson was born on April 20th, 1899 in Mayfield, Kentucky, to Frank and Minnie Wilson, and attended the Mayfield Colored Grade School, as well as the all-black Kentucky Normal School and Industrial Institute in Frankfort. Whereas as a teenager, Ellis Wilson worked as a janitor of Day's ready-to-wear dress shop, where he would draw on the storefront windows with cleaning wax, which attracted the attention of passers-by. At the age of 19, Wilson left Kentucky to study art in Chicago's School of the Art Institute. And whereas in 1928, Mr. Wilson moved to New York City, settling in Harlem, where he developed his talents in the WPA art programs. He later moved to New Jersey, where he worked at a factory that made airplane parts, and it was there that Wilson began depicting his co-workers, a project that won him the Guggenheim Fellowship. And whereas Mr. Wilson's style further developed while he was on a trip to Haiti in the 1950s, and began his signature use of that heightened color range, simplified forms, and the subject matter of hard-working people. In 1947, Wilson brought his talents back home to the Mayfield Public Library for a local artist exhibit. Mr. Wilson died in 1977 in New York and is buried in an unmarked pauper's grave. However, his work was placed in several galleries during his life, including that of Murray State College in 1950. And whereas later in the 1980s, Wilson's painting The Funeral Procession was a prop on the set of The Cosby Show, it was the primary feature of one episode which shined a national spotlight on the life and art of Mr. Ellis Wilson. Now, therefore, I, Kathy O'Neill, Mayor of the City of Mayfield, do hereby proclaim the 18th day of February 2023 as Ellis Wilson Day.
Thank you. I think this probably should reside permanently in the Ice House, the proclamation. So, we'd like to acknowledge many groups. One, the Ice House Gallery, which has helped tremendously and more than helped, has sort of taken the lead in getting the Ellis Wilson paintings here, and some sketches that were actually done by Wilson. If you haven't had a chance to see them yet, they're in the back. And Michael generously brought some of the original artwork from the book, and we have a budding young artist who has brought his work to share today. So we're just we have a lot of things to celebrate and enjoy today. I also want to thank the Grace County Public Library, which has never said no when I've asked them if we could use your space. And I'd like to make a presentation to the library. Murray State University did a major exhibit on Wilson's work about 25 years ago, and this is the book or the catalog that came out of this exhibit. And I'd like to make sure the City of the Mayfield, you guys have a copy for the library.
Yes, thank you so much.
We've also had help from the Eagle Gallery, obviously, and from the Convention and Visitors Bureau here, and too many other people to name, and I say that because I forgot to write them down. And at my age, that's not a good thing. So we thank everyone, if you're remotely involved. We thank you and appreciate you. One of the things we try to do as the Jackson Purchase Historical Society is serve as a catalyst. We don't necessarily have the numbers or the resources to do everything that needs to be done, but we can stimulate things and stir things up. And sometimes that leads to good results like this. And we're very happy to do it. I'm now going to, and why we're here to celebrate not only Ellis Wilson, but this tremendous book. It's really important, I think, as a historian and as a parent and as an American, that all Americans and all generations of Americans know the diverse range of people who have made this country great. We have to have Ellis Wilson included in the catalog of great American painters. If we don't, we're missing something and it's hurting our children and our grandchildren. So congratulations and kudos to Jayne and Michael, whom I can barely see. I'm now going to turn things over to my colleague, Bruce Dobbins, who many of you will know, who's going to moderate a panel discussion by some children. This is a children's book, after all, and we'll take it from there. Bruce.
J.J. Lopez? Okay, come on up here. I'm going to step on this side of you. Step that close to the microphone. This is J.J. Lopez, and he's read the book ahead. And I want to know, what'd you think about it? What'd you like?
I think the book was good because the
illustration. You like the illustration? Hey, I like pictures too. Even when I get a long book that doesn't have many pictures, I still spend a lot of time with the pictures too. Yeah, okay. Anything else you want to tell us about the book? No? Okay. By the way, oh, excuse me, just a minute. That's your certificate? Thank you. Is it Joni Lopez? Okay, I see your first name. Joan, come on up, Joan. Around here, so you face the cameras. What did you think about the book?
It was amazing.
Amazing. Really? Do you think you could write a book like that? Maybe down the line. And so you liked the reading as well as the illustration, did you? Okay, anything else you want to say about the book?
Whoever is the author,
Okay.
you guys are good.
Here you go. Here's your certificate. Now, he wants you to clap for him. Huh? Kelly, come on up, gal. Tell us about the book.
I liked how Ellis knew what he wanted to do for his life. He knew he had a goal for his life. And when he did illustrations, he went out to explore the world to know what he to get inspiration on what he wanted to paint and stuff. And he knew that he wanted to become an artist. I mean, that's his goal. From
the start,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
That was his goal.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. There you go. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, Javon? Noonan? He's not here. Javon, are you back there somewhere come in late? Okay, he's not here. The girls are telling me. Okay. We got Chanel Powell. Hi. Tell us all about it.
So I liked that Ellis really stuck to his dream and his goals, and that even though people were telling him,
I don't really like milk anyway, so it's perfect.
Hey, go ahead. There's somebody on Zoom. I need to mute that.
even though people were telling him that you'll starve to death, you'll never make any money, he still stuck to his goal, and he's very great then and now.
Hey, all right. Thank you. Is it Kaylin Wickham? See here? Oh, yeah, here he comes. This young man is bringing, this is his painting. He just exhibited at the African American Art Show that we put on for us, but had to be at Paducah City Hall. Come on up here, Jim, right here. How did Ellis Wilson, did he inspire you to be a painter? Oh, he didn't, okay. Your mother did. Where's Mom? There. Mom, thanks for the inspiration.
Yes, Mom. Yes.
And so, you know, your work looks a lot like his. Do you notice that? Have you seen the pictures around? Yeah, a replica. It looks like one of his. That's what I was thinking. So that's great. So you've read the book, and did you like the illustrations in there? And you know the fellow sitting right here? You see him? He is the artist that did those. So you two have a lot in common. Isn't that great? Yeah. What else anything else in the book that you read that excited you? Okay.
I like that he showed lots of things he
Okay. Yeah. He showed life. Yeah. Okay.
God, can I have one stand by the painting real quick?
Oh, yeah. Now he wants you, our photographer over here wants you to stand by this painting.
Look this way, please.
Look right to him.
I'm going to send this to the local paper.
You're going to be famous, dude.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay. Thank you. Oh. Excuse me. Okay, I'll figure out what I did with his. What did I do with it? Oh, here it is. I ran over here. There it is. That's yours? Yeah, okay. Thank you. What did you think of the book?
I like how he had a dream and he never gave up on it. People were saying, he wanted to be people were telling him he should be a teacher and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when he saw his dad draw draw a painting, he wanted to stick to his dreams, and he got inspiration from other people. And so then he wrote his first letter to his mom and told him that he did an art piece.
Okay, great. So you're going to be an artist? No? Going to be a writer? No? Okay. Then I guess you're going into some other field. Thank you.
You guys did a great job. We really appreciate you coming today to help us celebrate Ellis Wilson, and I hope that the book will help you as you follow your dreams. Because that's, I mean, one of you mentioned, I think several of you mentioned it. The thing I took away from the book is he never gave up on his dream. And I think that's a lesson we can all benefit from. I'm still wondering if I'm going to fulfill my dream. But no, I got to spend 50 years teaching college, so that's worked out pretty well. It was pointed out to me that I didn't introduce myself. I apologize for that. I know who I am.
We know you.
At least so far. Maybe, you know. Well, I'm Bill Mulligan. I'm the president of the Jackson Purchase Historical Society, and I'm a retired professor from Murray State. And we're really glad you're here. Now, the next part of our program is to give Michael and Jayne and Michael, or Michael and Jayne, they can flip a coin, I guess, arm wrestle for who goes first, to talk about the book and about Wilson. I mean, you know, this is a children's book, but this is also a major American artist. And I know Jayne, having talked with her, and I know from time we've spoken with Michael, they know a whole lot about Ellis Wilson that's not in the book. And so if you guys want to come over to the microphone, so we have maybe one, you know, I don't know how you want to do it, but, you know, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I am really thrilled to be here with you today to talk and celebrate the art and the life of Ellis Wilson. I learned about Ellis Wilson and his remarkable art and talent about 15 years ago. Although I grew up in Paducah, I had not heard any local lore about Ellis Wilson, or I never spotted a bronze historical marker telling his story in Western Kentucky. Likewise, although I was very interested in art history as an undergraduate at the University of Kentucky, and I took several modern art history classes, he was not included in my textbooks, and he was not included in the lectures. So it was well into adulthood, as you can tell. About 15 years ago, I learned about Ellis Wilson. I learned about the man who grew up in Western Kentucky, who, with more than 6 million African Americans from the South, became part of the Great Migration North, looking for better opportunities to find a school that allowed him to study art, who later became an important part of the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s and 30s, and who was a 2-time recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship. Like so many African Americans of his generation, his journey as a man and as an artist is a very important part of his story, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, is that journey. Many of us in Kentucky didn't know his story, still don't know his story, but some interesting research began in the late 1990s. A retrospective exhibit was organized by Albert Sparrow, who was the museum director, gallery director at the Clara M. Eagle Gallery at Murray State University. When he arrived in Murray, he noticed these paintings, and I hope you'll take a moment to look at these paintings out in the hall. These are the 3 original Ellis Wilson paintings that Murray State University, or Murray State College at the time, purchased when Ellis Wilson was an active artist in the 1950s. I believe most of those were purchased. So Albert Sparrow was even more intrigued by these paintings when he learned that the artist grew up in Mayfield, just 20 miles away from the college. So he became so intrigued, he looked for the Ellis Wilson paintings all around the country. They're housed in different museums and galleries and in private collections. Albert put together a retrospective exhibit in conjunction with Ellis Wilson's 100th birthday anniversary and celebration. And I think Bill mentioned this book. The Art of Ellis Wilson was published in conjunction with these exhibits. The exhibits were shown at Murray State and at the University of Kentucky Art Museum. And University Press of Kentucky published this monograph, which pictures all of the art that was shown in that retrospective exhibit. It also tells a lot of Ellis Wilson's personal history and also a reflection on his art. So I highly recommend that. It's a really important book. It was an important resource for me. At the same time, or contemporaneously with these retrospective shows of his work, KET, Kentucky Educational Television, produced a documentary called So Much to Paint. And it's a wonderful documentary. It's still available on demand online, so you can watch that at your convenience, and I highly recommend it. These two sources became an important part of my knowledge of Ellis Wilson, and it also inspired me to dig deeper and to look for some of the original sources. His papers, his personal papers, are archived at the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, and I was able to review all of those papers. They came by microfilm and microfiche to the University of Kentucky Library System upon special request. So I spent a lot of time with his personal papers. Those are things that he had collected from, and newspaper clippings, art gallery brochures, cards that he had designed. He was a graphic designer after he attended the Art Institute of Chicago. So that became a primary source too. There's also a really wonderful oral history interview that was done with him in 1975 by a woman named Camille Billups. That interview to me reveals so much of his personality and a true sense of him and his voice. One of the things I wanted to reflect in my book was his voice. So I used a lot of his quotes scattered throughout the book. When he speaks in the book, so much of it is actual quotes from his interview or from his Guggenheim Fellowship applications. I think it was important to try to capture his voice in his own words. And one of the reasons I wanted to write it as a children's book is because he was inspired to become an artist as a child. He knew from a very young age that he wanted to be an artist. So I thought that that would be a wonderful connection and possible inspiration for young people to follow those dreams and to know that inherent desire to do something that that you're convinced that's what you need to do. You should do it. So this is Mayfield in 1900. Ellis Wilson was born in 1899. He grew up in an area of town called the Bottom, which was part of the segregated community during the time of mandated segregation under Jim Crow laws. This shows you a bit of downtown. This is a picture from 1906. These are particularly poignant, I think, now after the tornado, the 2021 tornado. So Mayfield was, as you can tell, a fairly bustling farming community and center. The tobacco business was very important. And Ellis Wilson said this was a good place to grow up. This was from this 1975 interview. I've always been rather glad that I did grow up there as long as I got out when I did. I know a lot of us feel that way, that you want to get out of your hometown as soon as you can, but it was a very leisurely, normal growing up as one could have. You knew everybody. Okay, next. And there's a very old photograph of the courthouse square. Mayfield was known as an important tobacco market at that time. There were lots of tobacco farmers and workers in the community. As I mentioned, there were segregated communities here in Mayfield. There were 4 primary communities: the Bottom, out across the ditch, Boxtown, and Pee Wee Ridge. And the Wilson family grew up and settled in the Bottom. This is the Wilson home on Water Street. And Second Christian Church was the Wilson family church that they attended. Ellis was born to Frank and Minnie Wilson, a family with 6 children. His mother was instrumental in the founding of Second Christian Church. In fact, I read in some of my research that he referred to the church as Miss Minnie's Church. And it still stands today. At a very early age, I wanted to be an artist because my father used to paint. An itinerant teacher used to come through our town, and I think my father studied with him some. As I grew up, there was a picture in my father's barber shop. It had to do with Christ chasing the moneylenders out. There was a lot of stuff going on in this painting. There were dancing girls in it, I remember. He gave up painting because he had about 8 kids. I guess I got what little talent I have from him. In another section of that interview, he mentions that he was inspired to become an artist because of his dad, and he was inspired to get his education because of his mother. He was a first-generation college graduate. So after he attended the school here in Mayfield, I believe the name was the Mayfield Colored Graded School, and it had all 12 grades in it. And after he graduated from high school, he attended what is now Kentucky State University. 2 years he went to school there, and he realized once he got there that there were only 2 degrees offered there, one in agriculture and one in education. And he didn't want to be a teacher, and he didn't want to be a farmer, and nor did he want to be a barber and take over his dad's barber shop. He wanted to be an artist. So he found a school, the Art Institute of Chicago, and applied there and was accepted. There were no art schools in Kentucky for him to attend. So he took an all-night train to Chicago as a young man. This would have been in 1918. The Art Institute of Chicago, which now is this just regal building, as you can tell, was brand new. I think this picture is from about 1902. So he arrived in Chicago in 1918. Almost instantly, when he got there, there were incidences of rioting going on. So he was unable to get downtown to go to school. And so he actually took a semester off that semester. And so he started up again. He lived on Wabash Avenue. He lived with a landlady who had been an actress. And he said in this interview with Camille Billups that it was during that time that he lost his country accent. So Chicago was a very bustling place, and unlike the small rural town that Ellis had come from, but he loved it. The Art Museum, the Art Institute and the museum are all in one. You could go through the galleries at will, and it was very exciting. I thought I was in Paris. There were hundreds of white students, and among them, I think, were 3 or 4 Negroes. So he was one of the first African-American students to be accepted there. He lived in Chicago for 10 years. He graduated and was one of the leading students at the Art Institute. He stayed there and was a graphic artist. He stayed in Chicago ultimately about 10 years, but it was hard to make a living there. So he decided, and this is an important part of his journey, is that he decided to move to New York City. So he moved to Harlem in 1927. It was a very bustling place and the hub of creative expression and this cultural explosion going on as part of the Harlem Renaissance, what we now know as the Harlem Renaissance. So living in Harlem provided opportunities for educational opportunities. He continued to take painting classes. He became part of the Harlem Art Guild. His work was shown by the Harmon Foundation, which was an important link for getting the art of African American artists out into the country. They did touring exhibits, and his work was often featured in the Harmon Foundation exhibits, the traveling exhibits. So there was a great deal of cultural expression and opportunities and personal liberty in Harlem in 1929 and the 30s. And as you can tell, these are examples, and these came from his archived personal papers at the Smithsonian. Some of his graphic designs. So he picked up graphic design work where he could. He also worked many different jobs in order to support his life as an artist. It wasn't easy to make a living as an artist, and it's still not easy to make a living as an artist. So he picked up work as a museum guard, as a courier. So he did what he needed to do to make a living and still keep painting. You can see some of his, this is an early piece. One of the things that Ellis Wilson focused on is painting African Americans during their work life, during their daily lives. So it's a great documentation of what life was like and what it looked like at the time. He was committed to painting black people, and that is a hallmark of his work. So, in the 1930s, he really built his reputation as an artist. And he also worked in an airplane factory, so he witnessed and took notes and did sketches of people at work, and those later became his paintings. He also worked for the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, which helped many, many artists and stonemasons and all sorts of people make a living during the Great Depression. So he was a part of that. He also created work during World War II these works were put into black chapels and other military installations for African American soldiers. These are triptychs that he did. And he received commendation from the United States War Department for his work. Because he was classically trained, he did many paintings. He did still lifes. In fact, he really loved to do still lifes, although he's probably known more as a figural artist later in life. So in the 1940s, starting in 1940, he started applying for the Guggenheim Fellowship because he knew that getting that award, which I believe at the time was about $2,500, would allow him some freedom to travel and to see some parts of the country that he had not seen before that could inspire his art. So this quote comes from one of his Guggenheim applications. Practically all of my life I've been painting under difficult conditions. Lack of money and time, especially time, have prevented me from painting as much and as often as I wanted to. I have made steady progress until now. My work has reached a mature stage, and I feel that with a grant such as the Guggenheim, giving the opportunity and encouragement to wholly concentrate on painting, I could express myself to the fullest degree and accomplish worthwhile work. In short, I want to paint all the time, everything of interest and beauty. And I think that really says a lot about how he saw the world. He saw the world as something beautiful and worth painting, and this curiosity about the world, I think, is reflected in his work. This is from his 1941 Guggenheim application. So he continues to say what he's so dedicated to is painting, and there is so much to paint and so little time. And the KET documentary takes its name from that quote, "So much to paint." So he was awarded the Guggenheim in 1944. And this is one of the Western Union telegraphs that he received, that this is from the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper wanting to interview him and to photograph him. So with his Guggenheim Fellowship, he travels. And so he heads, at the time, since the World War II was still going on, he was unable to travel abroad. So many artists wanted to go to Paris at that time. You know, it's still sort of the ultimate artist community. But because of World War II, he was unable to go abroad. So he went to the Sea Islands along the east coast of the United States, South Carolina and Georgia. And there he studied, again, working people. This one is out in the front hall. It's a beautiful painting. So as you can see, his journey was not only the physical travel of journeys, his art changed. It became much more vibrant. It reflected probably that Sea Island lighting and colors and the life that he witnessed there. You can just keep scrolling along. As you can see, the art starts to elongate and simplify. It becomes very geometric and yet fluid. And I think that's the other thing. After learning about his life, I was so intrigued by his worldview and his determination to become a painter despite all the hurdles. But also, I love his art. His art is so distinctive and vibrant and really documents a time period. So in the 1940s, he has these journeys. His paintings develop and mature in this vibrant way. So he makes regular visits back to Mayfield also to see his mother. By the 1940s, his dad has passed away. But he comes back to see his mother. I think his mother lives until 1965. So he came back fairly regularly. He remained in New York. He lived in Harlem for several years, but then he moved to the East Village because that's where all the artists lived, he said in his interview. So he loved that environment in the East Village. So he came back to Mayfield in 1947. the Mayfield Public Library, which, as I understand, was in the courthouse at the time. They held an exhibit of his work. I've read multiple places that that was the first art exhibit ever in Mayfield, and it was Ellis Wilson's. And there were many, many works of art exhibited. It was so well attended. It went on for several days. And one thing that I'm just really thrilled about is that Clara Ann Pollock came here today. She was a little girl, and she attended that 1947 exhibit. Clara Ann, would you stand up? And she is here. She grew up in Mayfield, but she lives in Greenville now. So her mother was a librarian. Is it Silva or Sylvia? Silva. I'm sure. It's like Jane with a Y. It's never spelled right. So she was a young girl. She came here to the library for that exhibit. And Ellis Wilson asked her mother if he could sketch her. And he did. He sketched 4 drawings of her. She brought those original Ellis Wilson drawings today. They're at the back of the room, and I hope you'll take a moment to look at those. I think that's just incredible. So thank you so much for being here and for bringing those sketches. And he asked your mom if he could borrow a pencil and paper to do those sketches too, because he hadn't come prepared to do art that day as the exhibitor. These are newspaper clippings that came from his papers that he had saved. And this is from the Chicago Defender. So his Mayfield exhibit made the Chicago papers too, so as well as the Mayfield Messenger. And he kept a lot of clippings that talked about his awards and his significant art prizes and awards that he won. The next one, you can also see this painting in the front hall. Murray State College and Clara M. Eagle, for whom the gallery is named, she was an art professor at Murray State College, and she recognized the immense talent of Ellis Wilson in the 1950s, late 1940s, 1950s. So here's a letter, and I want to read this because it relates directly to that painting and the purchase of that painting. And this is dated May 25th, 1950. Dear Mr. Wilson, your fine painting, End of Day, has arrived safely here in Murray. The entire committee is quite excited about your work, and we are delighted to have it. We are also deeply appreciative of the concession you made to our limited budget, and we are grateful for your favor. We hope that you will be able to visit our exhibition on your next trip home. It is of special encouragement to our own students to have one of our finest works of art done by a person from this vicinity. We are all pleased to learn that you have been awarded another fellowship and send our congratulations and best wishes for another successful year. I'm enclosing a check for your painting. Cordially yours, Clara M. Eagle, head of the Department of Art. So I love that connection, that painting is actually here today to celebrate Ellis Wilson. Okay. And of course, this is Funeral Procession, probably his best known painting, and the one that was that we saw the replica by the young artist today. Click that again. It was the subject of a 1986 episode of The Cosby Show, in which Claire Huxtable learns that a painting by her uncle Ellis was going to be auctioned at one of the fine and fancy art auction houses. So she and Cliff Huxtable go. It's a really funny episode because there's so much of a comedic element of the auction process of, keep your hand down, don't make eye contact, all that. So that was 1986. A copy of this painting the funeral procession, hung over the Huxtable mantle for most of the rest of the series. So that was an opportunity, but at the time, I remember that episode, but I'd never made the connection to that Uncle Ellis was Ellis Wilson, who grew up in Mayfield. Ellis Wilson lived the rest of his life in New York City. He died in 1977, and his inspiring story is why I decided to write A Journey in Color, The Art of Ellis Wilson. I want to turn over the podium to Michael McBride, the illustrator.
Let's give Jayne a hand because that's a lot of research goes into it. So I illustrated my first book in 1982. And it was very interesting that got me. I went to school my first 2 years of college to study to be an illustrator. And ended up, I was in St. Louis, and then I ended up at Tennessee State University in 1977, ironically the year that Ellis Wilson passed away. And I knew about Ellis Wilson then because he had passed away. Being at a historical black college, when you're studying art history, you study at least 90% of African American art history because, as like Jayne said, it was not put in regular American art history. So I knew about Ellis Wilson. So this book, it was a journey for me in doing this book because having known of him, and I felt very honored to be able to do a book, illustrate a children's book about an artist, and especially an African American artist. So how Jayne and Shaitland Press, Virginia, how they found me, I'm a member of the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and they were looking for African American artists to illustrate this book that Jayne had wrote, because I think, Jayne, you wrote it 10 years ago, I think? Started on 10 years ago. And so, so they happened to see my work and saw my bio and everything, and kind of thought that with my style and what I did, and my life kind of followed along with Ellis Wilson. At the age of 8, I told my parents I was going to be an artist. I knew this, and at the age of 8, I didn't really know what an artist was, but my mother told me, "Oh, you're going to be a little artist." I said, "Yeah, that's what I wanted to be." And fortunate enough for me, I didn't realize I started drawing at the age of 4. I did not know this. My mother had to tell me because I knew I started drawing at the age of 6. That's what I remember, drawing the Superman comic books. But she told me I started at 4. I said, okay. And, but my father, of course, I'm a bishop's kid. My father was a minister. So like Ellis, I was church, being involved in that. And my father used to let me illustrate the posters for the Sunday school lesson, so I thought that was really cool. And my mother would bring typing paper and pencils to church because in black churches you're there for 3, 4, 5 hours. And so she knew that would keep me still. And so I used these beautiful old Bibles with all these beautiful engravings. I used to spend all my time, just doing that. So I had that opportunity. Now, the interesting thing, I grew up out in the country, so I did not have art lessons. I'd never seen original paintings all the way through from elementary school to middle school to high school. Never had art because they didn't have it in the county schools. But I remember telling my father at the age of 17 when I was getting ready to go to college, he asked me, said, "Well, what are you going to major in?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be an artist." He said, looked at me and said, artists can't make any money. They don't make money. I looked at him, I said, "Well, they might not, but I am." And he said, I believe you. I said, so, you know, that's just, I had that much confidence, and I was like, Ellis, it didn't matter what, I was going to be an artist, you know, and did whatever it took and whatever it is to do that. So to the book, I have to give Jayne, and I told her this, as an illustrator, I've illustrated over 80-something children's books. And when you have a writer that can write with so much soul and emotion and picturesque, it makes it wonderful for an illustrator to be able to illustrate it. And me knowing the story of Ellis Wilson and understanding the Harlem Renaissance and that whole group, and knowing that a lot of artists were from the South, but they had to go north and to go to art school because there were no art schools in the South, and historical black colleges at the time when they were formed, they didn't form for art. It was education, you know, education, agriculture, and all this stuff. So they had to find art schools, and Chicago Art Institute was one of them. Oberlin College was one of them. Then if you got to Harvard and Yale, you know, on up to New York Students Art League, Students Art League there, and then the Harlem Renaissance. So Ellis was part of that whole group of Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, all those, the actors, I mean, the musicians, the performers, they all blend in together in Harlem because it was the mecca of that. And that's why it was called the Black Renaissance. So the book, when I talked with Virginia and Jayne, who was discussing a book after I had read the manuscript, we got to talk, and I started telling them that, you know, things that I saw. As an illustrator, I do enormous research on stuff. The research that I did on doing Ellis Wilson is about that thick for just researching and sketching and all and doing his book. And I teach, I'm an art professor at Tennessee State University. I've been there about 30 years, and I teach illustration. And when I show my illustration students my file on a book, they go like, you know. So I said, yeah, I said, you're all lucky. You got the internet now. When I first started illustrating, there was no internet. You had to go to the library, you had to find magazines, you had to, I mean, it was a lot of stuff. But in doing the book, I was trying to see, I channeled Ellis Wilson, my inner Ellis Wilson, and how he would feel in the things that he was doing. When I was illustrating certain images and stuff, I was thinking about that and just feeling the emotions and the knowledge of what I had that was going on. And I knew that he loved color. Most African-American artists, it was about color, and a lot of that is ancestral. So in doing that, that was one of the things that I wanted to do. And also in the book, I wanted to make sure that if you didn't have I wanted Ellis painting some of his paintings, okay? And so that was one of the things people were looking at. Said, oh, you're actually duplicating one of his paintings. You know, his paintings. I said, yeah. You know, that was part of it, is that all when he was talking about the things that he painted and the people and all of that, you know, I wanted to make sure that children, when they were seeing it, they would, you know, see it and they could read it. And what's interesting is that I even looked at the size of the paintings that I was duplicating of his. And if you look at the book, you'll see some of them are small and some of them are big. And the one there where he's painting standing, that painting was about 36 by 40. So that's about the size that painting was in relationship to him. So I really try to do thorough research when I'm doing illustrations. Right now I'm getting ready to illustrate a book, and it's funny, you were talking about the South Carolina, I'm illustrating a book now called the Geechee Gullah book. It's a ABC book about the Geechee Gullah history, you know, and so I'm researching and I'm pulling up all kind of stuff, and I'm so glad we have the internet now, because I would have had to spend time sitting in the library like I used to do, looking at books. But this book was, it's probably one of the most favorite books that I've ever illustrated. But I guess because it was about a real person, about an artist. But I'm looking forward to what we're getting ready to do. I'm starting on it now. The Helen LaFrance, and she was another one that I knew about because she's in the collection at Fisk University, the Stiglitz collection. So I'm excited about that book. You know, another Mayfield person. You know, and she and Ellis knew each other. You know, and so it's really exciting. And the journey of an illustrator. So I applaud that young man and his mother for supporting him, because I understand he's 9 years old. Just giving him support. That's, you know, that's very important. You know, I get too many students going, well, you know, I want to major in art, but my parents told me I need to major in computer science or somewhere to get a job. You know, getting something to fall back on. But if he believes in himself, you know, like Ellis believed in himself, and how I believed in me and still do, you know, as an artist, you can be successful, you know, as an artist and as an illustrator. But I'm not going to talk long because, you know, I'm an art professor. I can lecture for 3-4 hours. So I don't want to get into it because, like a minister, I get going, man, and then, you know, you start looking at your watch. So, but I'm going to shut it off here, and I guess they have questions and stuff and all that. We can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellis Wilson, are you on here now, please?
Thank you so much for the presentation about Uncle Ellis. He had so much to contribute to the world of art.
Amen.
And I'm sure the book will inspire many young people to also know the beauty of color, which he absolutely loved. Thank you again.
You're sure welcome. Thank you for chiming in.